Welcome back to the Bootleg Universe. I'm Sam Lasky, joined as always by the insane leader of our posse, Adi Shankar.
Today's guest, one of my oldest friends in Hollywood. He's a producer, produced a movie very recently called Infinite, starring Marcus Wahlberg. Also, my friend John Zaozirny, who's our guest, is a manager of screenwriters, and a very great manager of screenwriters. This isn't just, normal manager of screenwriters. Sam, would you like to explain why?
He has had 3 number 1 scripts on the blacklist, which we're going to be talking about today. If you know anything about screenwriting in Hollywood, that is kind of an incredible feat.
Right.
So welcome back.
And Mark Wahlberg, also incredible feat. Yeah. So we met in 2010.
Damn.
We met in 2010. It was just very brief. I think the first time we hung out was because Laura Walker introduced us.
Yes.
And then we talked, and then you came and hung out with me at my old place on that roof.
I used to live Park La Brea, and you were right next door.
Yeah, and that was great. That was great. I was like, "Whoa, this dude's fucking smart." And you're very motivated. You have a lot of energy, right? I've also seen you take what looks like punches to the face. And I've seen the same thing happen to you. I mean, when I first met you, you looked like someone had just kind of taken your head and put it through a fucking grate.
You met me at the tail end of what we were talking about last episode, that hot spec went out, had lots of great meetings, and just it all faded away.
Yeah.
And I was pretty depressed when you met.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so there's a mental health cost to, not just being in Hollywood. I think that's kind of reductive to say Hollywood, right? Because I'm also in the video game industry now.
Right.
And I see it there also.
Yeah, I've heard.
Right? Yeah. There's a mental health cost to following your dreams.
Yes. Following your dreams, especially dreams that are risky. I mean, you said last episode more professional NFL players than
WGA West.
WGS writers.
But it's not just relegated to the artists, right? Because I mean, you are an artist as well. You just are. Your job is to be a representative.
I think it'd be true for producers, executives, agents.
Yeah.
There's a lot of burnout.
Yeah. Yeah. And I look back at being 23 and full of whatever I was full of.
Vim and vigor.
Possibility.
And possibility.
Substantial amount of bullshit as well.
Probably. All of it. And I look back, and some of those people I was talking to, they were sad. They were sad. There was a thing behind the eyes that was
I was going to ask you, think of all the big, you must have been talking to a lot of big agency muckety mucks, right? Everybody wanted to have a piece of you, Yeah. How many of those people are still in the business, I wonder? 50%?
I mean, most of them are gone.
Yeah, it's weird, huh?
The ones that have survived look like they've been through war. Literally war, and I don't want to, disrespect veterans or anything, but they look like they've been through war, and it's an emotional war, not a war, but actually, the 3 months ago, because I've been gone for 2 months. Literally my last interaction was I was walking on Sunset. I just started walking on Sunset for no reason. I found this high-tech medical building, and I walk in and I'm like, "Hey, you want to inject me with something?" They're like, "Okay." So they inject me with some vitamins, and I walk out. This is sounding super shady. It's not. I walk out.
It just sounds like some rich guy bullshit.
Yeah, it's some rich guy bullshit. And I walk out and I see a manager, a manager that I was friends with, and we'd lost touch. We just lost touch. It wasn't there was no falling out. It was just, we were lost touch.
That's pretty normal.
Yeah. And I looked him in the eye and I asked him how he was doing. And I could tell he was not doing okay.
Yeah.
Right? Like something had fucking snapped in his mind, but he was like telling me he was okay.
His vision of where he was going to be at that point in his life was not lining up with the reality, I bet.
Yeah.
So,
and no, he completely had a meltdown. So I finally like, I was like, hey, let's sit down and chat.
Mm-hmm.
And then I finally said, look, dude, you're not doing okay. What's up? And, you know, I'm not going to share what he said, but the bottom line is, you know, we're sold, it's very, or not, we're sold. Like, there's a narrative that, okay, it's hard to break in. It's like the NFL, only the best make it, right? Okay, great. Then we're sold that, okay, once you get in, it's very cutthroat, and then the best of the best of the best rise to the cream of the top.
Once you do this, something happens, and once you do this, something happens.
Right.
But there is no.
But then but eventually there's like a drop off. That's what I've noticed. There's like a fucking drop off. Like
people get to the other side and they realize it's just a bunch of stairs they got to keep climbing.
Right. And it never ends.
I mean, you must know a lot of really successful people at the highest levels. I mean,
Yes.
I know you're friends with some famous actors, stuff like that. And like, are they? What's the happiness rate? Has success given them the happiness that they so desired?
No, I haven't seen a single person. I don't know one person in our industry or really any, and I would apply this to any industry. I don't know one person where success has brought them even one iota of happiness. The iota of happiness that happened was early on when they were first breaking in, and there was like a bunch of young guys and
that's the
girls.
weird thing that people always look.
Like, yeah.
They're always looking back to. It's funny you read like any band bio, any band like biography. It's like, man, like what I really miss is those early days, and it is kind of fascinating.
Yeah. The people that I know that are in our sphere that are wildly successful, like, books will be written, that kind of thing. The happiness is derived from not this.
Yeah.
This is like a job that they show up for.
And also you have to kind of like acclimate your expectations accordingly.
Yeah.
So is this something that you deal with your clients, that you see the burnout or the unhappiness from time to time? And how do you, as a manager professionally, but also as someone who's clearly friends with a lot of your clients, how do you approach this? What's your strategy, or is it outside your sphere of influence?
I mean, I wouldn't say that I can influence them so much as like all I can do is advise them on like, I think it goes back to some degree expectations, like you were talking about, kind of when you guys had met, and like I'm friends with a person who's not a client of mine, and he, had talked about how there was a certain point in his life where he had a success, and he's like, well, from this point onwards, everything's going to be great, and he's like, I feel like I peaked at that point, and that was when he was in his like early to mid 20s or something. And he had an idea that after that, things would be easy or things would be success. And he's like, I feel like, I'm a failure, and this guy was, only turning 30, and I was like, dude, I wasn't even a manager when I was 30, I didn't become a manager until I was like 34 or something, and that's where really and I was trying to tell him my story to kind of give him some feeling on that. But I think, the reality is a lot of people get into this business and they can derive their self-worth from the success or failure of a project. I have clients who are like, God, if I could only get a movie made, and then you get a movie made and then it didn't turn out the way you were hoping. And, you're like, oh my God, like, so what happens then? And you and I know we all know how little control you can have over whether a movie's good or not, especially if you're the writer, even in cases where you're like the director, and so, that's, I think what you have a lot of is you have to set your expectations accordingly. And I always tell people to celebrate their wins when they have it, and those wins could be something like getting a manager. They could be like, selling a script, or something happens. You got to celebrate those wins because they're few and far between. But they can appear because we're looking for the perfect version of success. And it's funny, I'll talk to someone, I'll be like, oh, congrats on this movie. And they're like, well, there's a writer who came in after me and I really don't like what they did or this or that. And so I think people look for the perfect version of success and you're just never going to find it. And so like you were saying, you got to find your happiness. You got to view the job for what it is, which is it's not going to fulfill your emotional needs. That doesn't mean you can't enjoy the victories when they happen, but it doesn't mean when the defeats happen that your entire identity isn't tied to them.
But even the wins, like I've seen the wins crush people just as much, if not more, than the defeat. Like, just as an example, that's coming to mind right now. Sure. Do you guys know who this dude Steven Schneider is?
Yes. Steven
Schneider found the Paranormal Activity movie, worked with Jason Blum on Insidious. Mm-hmm. It's kind of an early part of Blumhouse. So Steven and I used to be friends. I talked to him pretty much multiple times, not even every day, multiple times a day. And this was like right after Paranormal and right after Insidious, right? Mm-hmm. So I knew Steven during
the success.
Like literally, he actually even called me up. Like him and Jason Blum had this falling out. He'd had a falling out with Roy Lee. Mm-hmm. So he moved into my office. He was running his production company out of my office, and then Entertainment One gave me and Steven a first look deal, and I was like, I don't know, like 26 at the time. It was fucking crazy for me, but. Actually, it wasn't crazy for me because I treated everything like it was no big deal, which I can get into in a second because that also had a mental health cost. Mm-hmm. Just kind of the lack of excitement that I allowed myself to feel, that had a mental health cost on me. But on Steven, what I observed was like the high of, I found this random thing and then it became the number one movie and made this much amount of money. Mm-hmm. Oh my God. Then I did it again with Insidious. Then I did it again with, and then when he was in my office, that's when, and we were working together, that's when The Devil Inside came out. Right. Paramount released it. Again, it was like William Brent Bell directed it. It was like a $1 million movie that opened, made like, I don't remember. It made a ton of money. It was
classic, like January, February.
Yeah. Just crushed. And at the time I didn't understand because I was a kid. I was like, again, 26. But I was like looking at this older dude, much older than me, waking up every day, completely in like a panic. He like woke up in a panic attack and went to bed in a panic attack. And he lived like this for years. And I saw him do this like every day. He was like in this cycle of like a mental health crisis. And it's like the success led to people wanting to talk to him. Yeah. People wanted to talk to him. People just wanted to talk to him. They're like, oh my God, you're the Paranormal Activity guy, right? So on some level, and Steven had written books, like horror books or edited horror books. Mm-hmm. So they were like, no, this guy's an expert. I remember Adam.
People thought he had the keys to the kingdom.
Absolutely. Like Adam, who ran Paramount at the time, Goodman. Adam Goodwin released a statement to Variety saying, creative producers are going away. But here's one, Right. And Adam Goodman and I had a conversation about Schneider like years later about, just the level of pressure that came from this level jump that happened literally overnight was like a tsunami. So it's not just the wins. It's not just the losses, it's the wins too.
It is one of those things where it's interesting, especially when the success can lead you to like, it's also what you expect from yourself. And I think if you recognize it as luck, I mean, I don't know exactly what Steven's particular issues were, but if you recognize it as luck and you're like, okay, I'm going to have wins, I'm going to have ups and downs. But if you have that at a certain point, you're like, well, I am who I am put into the world, then when the fall comes, and it is inevitable, it will come, that there will be something that doesn't quite work out. It can be crushing, and you're always chasing to kind of get back on top.
Yeah. So I was aware of what you just said, like in my 20s, I was aware of this. And so I went the other extreme. I refused to celebrate any wins. Mm-hmm. I didn't acknowledge anything. I treated everything like, not only is this not a big deal, I've done this 30 times before. Mm-hmm. I'm good. I'm going to get no emotional satisfaction out of it. Mm-hmm. And it worked at the time. And it was great. It was great at the time because it was like,
You're a very cool customer.
right. But then there's like something that happened, like when I hit like 30, where I'm like, what the fuck is going on? Like I don't, like I've trained my nervous system to not feel enjoyment. I was fucking weird.
Well, so did you feel like you were a weird bit of a junkie where you're kind of like, looking for the next thing that was not necessarily like you were? Did you feel like at some point, if you got to some level of success, it would make you feel something? You're like, I'm not going to celebrate this. It's not a big enough win to celebrate.
Yeah, but it got to the point where I was in situations where I was conscious that anyone I went to college with, like there were college, anyone I went to college with, if this had just been one experience for them, this would have made their year.
Sure.
And I yet was not reacting to it because I was now I trained myself it was almost like a physiological thing.
Right.
Like I'd physiologically train myself. Numb myself. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like as another example, I had this friend who was a cinematographer. He was like fresh out of college. And I was speaking at UCLA. I was like teaching a class at UCLA.
You were?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
A film class. Yeah, like 27 maybe. I'm teaching a film class. And it wasn't even an undergrad class. I was a graduate. It was a graduate.
Like just once, like, okay, go on.
So
I would like to audit that class.
And I was talking about different ways people have hacked the apparatus that governs film. And I had this whole class on Randy Emmett.
Okay.
Right? Because I'm like, look, the guy operates the way he operates. He does what he does. He will. I'm
sure you've seen that it's all falling apart now.
Yes, of course. By the way, I read the LA Times thing, and I was like, they're like, this is like 20% of what I've seen.
Yeah.
You know what
No, it always is. I'm excited for the book 5 to 10 years from now.
But Randy had like come up with like interesting ways to kind of work around the system because the system
like
did not.
Samaha back in the day.
Exactly. But Randy was the first guy to do like the whole we're selling posters. If we're selling movie posters with people's faces on it, let's just get more faces on the poster, but they don't have to be in the movie. So, that Bruce Willis hack that he'd been doing that for years.
I mean, it goes back to Golden and Globus, but yeah.
Yeah.
Corman. Yeah.
But so yeah, I was like driving back and this is etched in my mind. My friend turns to me and he goes, "You don't react to anything. Like what the fuck? Like everything is no big deal to you." I don't know. And I should probably talk to a therapist about this or something, but
that's what this is talk therapy.
But this is talk therapy. But yeah, this was something that I did to counteract that exact thing that you were talking about, which had its own detrimental like mental health aspect. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, look, I think we can also pivot a little bit and talk a little about, the losses, because having too much success is not a problem people have, not to diminish it. But I mean, I think what I've seen a lot of time with.
Sorry, it just clicked.
What's that?
I wasn't allowing myself to feel good.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, that's very you.
Right? That's very me?
Yes.
How is that very me?
Well, is it?
Because you always think there's like, I don't know. I feel like you're a withholder. You like to withhold things from yourself.
Yeah.
Because maybe don't feel worthy enough. I don't know.
Sure.
Right.
This is getting real like therapy.
No, it's so is it that you're trying to protect yourself from the potential downswing, or is it that you feel like you're just not worthy? Because for me, like, I had a panic attack at Cannes right before the premiere of Guardians of Justice. I know it's purely because I think I'm not worthy of having a successful moment.
Wow.
Which is a very personal statement to make on a YouTube show, but it's true.
Why do you feel like you're not worthy? Like, do you feel like, as in, like, because you didn't put, like, do you feel like, you didn't put the work into this project? Because we both know that's not true.
No. It's
not based on any kind of reality.
Right. It's an underlying issue that I've had since childhood.
It's the classic. What's the the part where you don't feel worthy? What's it? What the like the faker, the poser syndrome. There's this
Imposter syndrome.
imposter syndrome. Yeah.
Yeah, it's all childhood issues.
I will
from
say
where
this.
I grew
My
up.
wife worked with someone, and this person was incredibly successful. And what she learned was this person that she was talking to also had their own like feelings of inadequacy and stuff like that. And that was really helpful to her to realize that even I feel like you could go and talk to anybody. You go talk to Brad Pitt and he's like, yeah, like things are great, but like Steve McQueen, that was a real career, you know, like there's always someone above you. I was thinking that Bob Dylan song, Gotta Serve Somebody. It's like, whether it's the devil or the Lord, you got to serve. There's always someone above, you know, and that's the feeling. And so many of the people who get into the arts, I do feel like there's a little bit of a hole in yourself that you're trying to fill with something. And I think that it can be dangerous. You try to fill that with success or with the work. And if only get a movie made, or if only this thing would happen, then things would get better. And then you do it and you're like, well, that didn't fill me up, so I got to do it again. Or I need a bigger movie, or I need a bigger success. And it's a little bit of like, you're like a hamster on a wheel, and you just keep looking for more, you know?
Yeah. So like when I was in college, I was like devastated when it ended. Cause I like really cared, and I like had a lot of friends, and I had like a lot, you know.
Yeah.
And I also had a relationship end around that time that also like devastated me. Cause I'm like, oh my God, I'm entering this new era of my life, which is a big unknown. And in my mind, everyone just works in cubicles and is like super unhappy.
Right.
And
Why do you think that is? Is that something your parents did?
did what?
Like they worked in cubicles and were unhappy?
No, not
Where
at
did that
all.
idea come from?
Yeah,
That's
because
what work is.
you brought that up, the idea of the cubicle, so many times.
Yeah.
And I look at you and I don't think you're a man who's ever going to work in a cubicle.
Yeah. Well, I worked at a cubicle
When?
right after college.
Where?
In the suburbs of Chicago. I worked for Discover, the credit card.
What?
Yeah. So, you know,
Did you know this?
Yes.
So I started an ad agency when I was in college, right?
Right,
It was like a student group, and then turned into like a business, and it was great. So like advertising firms were recruiting me, and that's like what I wanted to do. I wanted to do something creative, right? I was like, maybe I want to be an actor.
Yeah.
But yeah, there was like family pressure, like to
Take the stable job.
take the stable job, and oh my God, you interviewed here and they accepted you. This is a good path. So I'm like, okay, cool. Also, there are other kind of snapshots that play in my mind when I was in high school, because I moved here to finish high school. This was like 2 years after, so this was like, it moved to America 2 days, my junior year of high school, 2 days before 9/11. And like, there was only like one other Indian dude in the school.
Mm-hmm.
He was like a year older. And I remember like this one like kind of big athletic, like you know, there's like big athletic dudes, like they're kind of like large.
Jocks, yeah.
No, but they're not like buff. This dude was like kind of like large.
Like a linebacker.
Yeah, he was actually a linebacker.
Okay,
Yeah,
yeah,
he was a
There you
linebacker.
go.
He turned to that dude and he said, "You're going to be stuck in a cubicle for the rest of your life." And I like saw that and I went, "Oh fuck, am I going to be stuck in a cubicle?" So like that became like a subconscious
Interesting.
fear. Weirdly enough, that guy like sends me fan mail. It's kind of weird. It's like, it's not fan mail. It's like kind of like weird.
Hey, Bo.
Yeah. It's like that. It's not fan mail. That's weird. That's not. There's
Faux friendship.
So
faux friendship. Yeah.
I guess I'll have a question that I'll throw out to both.
Yeah.
of you.
Yeah.
You know, there are a lot of people in this industry, probably maybe people watching this who want to break into this industry, who have dreamed their entire lives of being writers, directors, producers, actors, comic book creators, video game designers, something.
Mm-hmm.
At what point, you know, in your life should you consider just walking away from the dream? Which is something that nobody wants to talk about.
I mean, look, the simple answer is when it no longer brings you joy. And I know that's like a very pat answer, because I don't want to be like, well, we've given 5 days and 3 years and 2, you know,
Yeah.
It's really, but I think when it's causing you, when you don't want to do it, when it's makes you deeply unhappy.
Yeah.
I think that's the simple answer, is to say that's if it's not your living, right? And if it is your living, then you've got to figure out another aspect,
Right.
You know, that's if you're being successful. But if you're not successful, then at a certain point, I think you have to modulate your expectations, really. And I think find joy otherwise. And I've had clients be like, I don't think I'm going to write it anymore. And maybe they still write in their part-time or for fun or something like that, but I don't hear from them because they've decided to focus on their day job and focus more time on their family and take that, 1 hour, 2 hours a night that they were focused on writing and spend it with their kids or their spouse or like doing a new hobby or something like that. Maybe they still write, but I think that's the simplest answer, for me.
Yeah. So a little backstory. My dad was a finance guy, had an MBA, worked his way up, studied accounting in college, got an MBA, always was going to work in finance, had a pretty great job at a big company, very successful. And at 40, he just said, no, this fucking sucks. He quit his job, moved to a farm and became a woodworker. It was like the greatest life lesson I've ever seen. That did
you move to the farm?
Yes.
Oh, was he happier?
Yeah.
Oh, that's great.
But the life lesson is like, if the thing you've worked for actually doesn't make you happy, even if you've sunk in all this cost and time into doing it, go do the thing that makes you happy.
I always think that you want, it's easy to say though. I mean, for me, it's like when you have a family, you have other obligations, you want to make sure that, if you're just like, he moved to LA to be an actor and then you suddenly you guys were no longer getting dinner anymore, that might be a little problematic.
Well, absolutely. We were fine financially.
Yeah.
It's interesting. Yeah, because I don't feel like my job brings me joy unilaterally.
Nothing does.
If I had to...
I wouldn't say unilateral. I'd be like any joy.
Oh. Yeah, no, then in that case, I'm good.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
A lot of joy.
There's nothing that brings anyone. There's nothing that brings anyone joy unilaterally.
Drugs.
For a time.
Really?
For a time.
The next day?
Well, if he
that's like being like, there's nothing wrong with. I love drinking alcohol. I just drink alcohol all the time. Never gives me any problems. What if the next day? Well, that's the hangover. That's a separate issue.
Right.
There's no
kind
connection.
of not correlated at all.
That's future Sam's problem.
Exactly.
That I had too much whiskey.
Exactly.
So I was ready to call it quits last year.
Yeah, I know.
Really? We talked about this?
Yeah.
What did I say? I don't remember half the shit.
You sort of, I think we're seeing Guardians as like kind of I've done it. I've done the thing that I've been working on for 6 years. And I felt like you had come to this almost Zen place of completion on something that had been blocking you. I don't know. I don't think you were that serious when you talked about it. It didn't feel that serious. And also I'm dependent on you for a lot of my livelihood. So I'm always going to talk you out of it. But, yeah, it just felt like you had this sense of completion. And so you were considering what life looks like.
That's you, though. That's always you. Like, you're talking about I remember you talking about the video game, getting into video games, but you're always like, it feels to me like it feels less like you leave things and more like you put new things on, right? Less a departure and more like a pivot.
Right. That feels totally, yeah.
It's not like you're like, hey man, I've decided to get into, woodworking, like it seems like you take your skills and you're like, okay, I've done them in this one way. What if I translated them slightly to this way? The skills are transferable as opposed to like, yeah, now I reupholster furniture. That's my true joy in life. That'd be like a total 180.
You're so good at reframing things, dude. This is why you're so like strong mentally.
Well, I also see you like, I don't see you all the time. So it's like one of those interesting things where like I see you like every 3 to 6 months or something like that. So it's I come to a little fresher perspective. It's funny. My wife is like, wow, our daughter's so much bigger. And I'm like, I don't see, but I see her every day, all the day for the last 30 days, but I'm interested to see what happens when my mother-in-law comes over because she hasn't seen my daughter for like 2 weeks or something. She's like, wow, she's so much bigger, but she can notice it because she's coming in from the outside. For me, I don't see you every single day. I see you every few months or something and we hang out and we have an amazing time and we talk about the entire world and everything. And so I can come at it from a little more of a neutral perspective.
Right. Yeah.
I don't depend on you for my livelihood, so
Right.
never made me any
So there's
money.
no agenda. You're like, listen.
You know that we're real friends is because I've never hit you up to hire on my clients. When you're asked, I've sent you people, but it's never like. But I'm always like, like for me, we're friends, and like there's no financial basis of it. You know, like Will was the best man at my wedding, Will Bell.
Yeah.
But he's not a client. People are like, oh, he must be your client. No, he's not my client. He's just my buddy. And I'm friends with a lot of people who are not my clients. But I'm also friends with. So for me, it's like that's a real relationship. Where you're not. There's no financial. It's not to diminish yours. Sorry, but
But I feel like what you're saying, what I'm getting from it is it's important to have like a team, a squad, and it doesn't just mean these are the people I work. This isn't just like my work squad.
No,
this is also like my support network of people who are floating within the ecosystem.
I mean, look. Here's the thing: if we all worked at a paper company or something, we'd be the movie guys. The movie, TV, comic book, video game guys.
Those,
totally. You're like video games. Those guys. Oh, those guys over there. That's who they are. You know. And so it's always funny. Sometimes I'll talk to people and they're like, "I would never date or be friends with people in our business or whatever." And I'm like, "Why would I not want to be friends with people who like the same stuff that I like?" That's why I got into this industry. It's not like we're on The Office or something and we're like, man, this paper company, we're doing this to pay our rent or something like that. There's an aspect of enjoying it. And so, for me, I find people and I connect with them. And, people always talk about Hollywood as being the sleazy place for terrible people and this and that. I've certainly met my fair share of sleazy people, but a lot of my friends, are in this industry and they're wonderful people. I've met, thousands of people, and I've pruned out the hundreds that I really connect with, and I make it a point to see them. And I don't see the terrible sleazy people unless I have to, And the reality is also the terrible sleazy people, they tend to, not always, but tend to like destroy themselves. And so the work kind of takes care of itself.
Yeah.
But a lot of and if I can find a way to work with my best friend, I'd love to find a way to work with you, but it's not the reason for my relationship with you. The reason my relationship is like, I love talking to you and I always learn something about myself when I'm doing so.
I think that's it's like an important piece of like the mental health equation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's exactly, I didn't even connect it to the original topic, but I think finding people to connect yourself and you can be real with. I mean, I play Fortnite with these guys like every couple of days or something, and none of them are my clients, but they become really good buddies of mine. And they send me baby gifts and stuff, and I talk to them, and they're all at different places in their careers, and some of them have kids, some of them don't. We talk about mostly Fortnite, but we also talk about our careers and we give each other advice and stuff like that, and it's been really helpful.
Yeah.
One of the biggest drivers of mental health issues, not just depression, but eventually dementia and all that stuff, is loneliness.
For sure. Yeah. And I think the other thing that I've taken away is like we all entered this because of love.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Because there's a lot easier ways to make money.
Right.
As they told me in my first day of film school.
And it's like tapping into that love, and maybe what that doesn't get you is the number one move. It doesn't. Maybe that love isn't going to turn. If you define
success as financial success, it's like. I've become a really big country music fan, and one of the biggest country music songs of all time is "Satisfied Mind." And it came from the songwriter guy who wrote the song. His father used to say, "Who's the richest man in the world?" And at the time he was like, J.P. Morgan or whoever. He's like, "No, you're wrong, son. The richest man in the world is the man with a satisfied mind." And that song is I first learned about Jeff Buckley's version, but it's like if you've it's cliche, but like if you have a satisfied mind, that's much better than all the money in the world. We certainly know a lot of unhappy rich people, or things happen, things change. But if you have a satisfied mind, if you feel good with what you've done in the world and your place in the world, then you're winning. And if you look to outside thing, box office success, career success, money in the bank. And it may work for a while, but inevitably it will let you down.
Totally. And
I think this ties back to something you were talking about last episode, which is you sit down with your clients right up front and ask what career they want to have, and don't try to force them into the successful.
And also,
I
have to believe that that's a career that I can help them with. and that we have a shared vision. And the simplest answer of like why relationships go wrong, and by the way, this is true of romantic relationships, is when you no longer share the same worldview. I think that is where I've seen romantic relationships and even friendships go awry. And I don't just mean politics. I mean, for me, one of the fun things with my wife is we'll go to a party and we'll come back and we won't have seen each other because we'll be talking to other people. And we'll be like, did you hear? And she's like, oh yeah. Even without saying something, we know it, right? And it's like that shared lingo. And like, that's the same thing I think you want with your clients is when something comes in, you're like, hey, I was kind of thinking this. And the client's like, oh my God, that's exactly what I was thinking. That doesn't always happen. But when the client's like, hey, this thing happened and this is what I want to do. And you're like, oh, I don't know with that. That doesn't mean that I don't try to support them and understand where they're coming, where they're doing it. But like if that happens all the time, then maybe we're not right to work together. But again, it goes back to relationships and shared worldviews, and that doesn't
mean community. Because like I look at the process of making Gardens of Justice. There was a period where I was like doing it by myself, and I was like not happy. It was like me and like the people at Netflix that were like helping out, but like and then the moment you can enter the equation, and then obviously me and Graham had once it felt like a team and a community and a squad doing it, it became fun, and it didn't matter like, hey, is it going to take an extra 2 months or 3 months or 1 week?
Yeah. Ken and I could sit in a tiny cramped little office for 9 hours every day, and we didn't hate each other.
Right. So it's really ultimately then what I'm taking away from this is it's not about the success. It's about the relationships you make along the way, and being in this industry.
Maybe it's just the friends we made along the way.
It is. I think it is, man.
I mean, it's a cliche thing, but it doesn't make it untrue.
Is it cliche or is that a QAnon thing?
No, that was the joke with QAnon. He was like, when it turned out QAnon wasn't true, he's like, maybe it wasn't about Q. Maybe it was because it was already a cliche.
Yes.
The cliche. I didn't. Okay, that's the first time I heard that. So I thought this is a QAnon reference.
No.
It's a cliche / internet cliche.
Oh, okay.
Maybe it wasn't about Gardens of Justice. Maybe it was about the friends we made along the way. Yeah.
But I feel like that's super true.
It is.
And it's like because I feel like then there's other people on the journey with you, and the journey doesn't need to be one where you do any one specific path. In fact, so.
You, me, Ken, and Graham would hang out
right
under normal circumstances, even if we weren't making a TV show.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly. But it gave us a context to talk about a specific thing.
Right. Buddy.
Boom.